go.
Children of the night, what music they make.
They're all gonna laugh at you!
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
What's up?
I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brain.
Never let it be said that we don't come through on our promises. We promised producer extraordinaire Peter Phok, and we have him here tonight. And I will tell you all, this is so exciting for me because he is tied to Ty West, who is my favorite horror director right now. It's John Carpenter, Ty West, and I mean, he's produced House of the Devil, the Roost, The Innkeepers, The Sacrament, Pearl, X, which these two movies are just made my year. Stakeland, 1BR, so many movies. So you are like the patron saint of horror fans who love art horror. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, happy to be here.
And we have Alok Mishra to thank for this. He of 1BR fame, and we're happy to see that you're sober. And this should be an interesting conversation. Different than talking with Alok.
Literally right before you joined, we were talking about how you had to keep getting up to go piss.
I think, the last time I can't remember. I mean, when I saw him in person, look, we went to go see something in the movies, and he snuck in like all these drinks, and I was like, oh, classic, just us. And but I was grateful, and so yeah. But then, sure enough, we both had to strategically try to leave so that we can come back and be like, what did we miss?
Yeah. I love doing that where someone goes, I got to go to the bathroom. And they say, tell me what I missed. And when they come back, I'll go, I don't know. I dozed off.
I once snuck a bottle of something in, and me and a friend of mine, and I think my friend, their bottle tipped over, and it was kind of an empty theater, and it rolled all the way down and just made the roll noise, and then you heard the kink like that. We're like, oh god.
There was an app that another filmmaker I worked with, Graham Resnick, would always swear by. Was I think it was called literally Run Pee, and it would tell you when to leave in a movie and then what you miss.
That's a great app.
Yeah,
I heard about that when Avengers Endgame came out. People were like, there's an app that tells you when you could go to the bathroom. It's like a 3-hour movie.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess it's not an opening night kind of thing, but when you get to the theater, I mean, that's pretty great. Yeah.
When you get to our age.
Jack and I wear catheters when we go to the movies. Anything over 2 hours.
I've never heard of this app, man. You're changing my life right now because I piss at least once during every movie.
Awesome. Even something short.
Yeah. Can you imagine? I mean, it's got to get aggregated. Like somebody's doing this, right? They're like, oh, this is the good, yeah.
That's incredible. I want that job.
Yeah.
That's killer.
So look, you're involved with X and Pearl.
Mm-hmm.
And in us, we talk about all the horror movies. This phenomenon that has happened with these two movies, X blew us away. We're like, oh my God, this looks like it was filmed in 1978. Pearl comes out, a completely different movie, but related. I went back and watched X the other day, and I'm like, this movie's even better now after I watched Pearl. I was going out of my mind. And then I was thinking, because one of Jason's pet peeves is prequels. And
his biggest pet peeve.
I hate goddamn prequels.
Fair.
But, the difference here was they planned this. And after watching this, and then X again, I'm like, okay, this is like Maxine's story told over 3 movies. And this is kind of like okay, now we're going back and telling you about Pearl, and there's more story to come on the other end. So it's almost like Tarantino, playing with the timelines.
Right.
But just the horror genre get good movies all the time, get bad movies all the time, but rarely does something this original come down the pike, so well made and so well thought out. I mean, I don't even have a question. Really,
Yeah, I mean, thank you. Yeah, thank you. No, it's very special. Ty and I have a long history of working together that stemmed from college. We went to school of visual arts, and he's been a big horror fan and really introduced me and brought me in. Like, while I liked horror and I liked a lot of movies and certainly more studio fare, like, but in college, introducing me to Bad Taste. Peter Jackson, a lot of Sam Raimi, Evil Dead. I mean, just movies that I probably was too afraid to watch when I was younger. And then, but then, so I mean, the last movie we had done together was In a Valley of Violence, which is not horror at all.
Great movie.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that was really fun to not do horror, go to a different world, but in Thai we trust, and we just kind of go with it. And so we got to make that revenge Western with an incredible cast and with Jason Blum and Blumhouse. And then Ty kind of went off and went into the series world for a while and had been directing both a lot of horror and thriller in the series kind of world, but it was, different. But the one thing that he always talked about was just how all of the indie movies we had made really prepared him for that, and it kind of strengthened his skill set there, and he became in demand because he was just always so prepared and efficient, and then wanted to bring that skill set into his own into his own movies. And so he was inspired and wrote this this movie X, and then felt that A24 is the only company that's going to say yes, it's too crazy, and they did. But then the challenges that of all movie making is sort of just where, when, and who, all those elements, and the movie's set in Texas, and so that was sort of the initial plan, but the pandemic threw a huge wrench into that, and so he didn't really think the movie was going to happen, and and that's sort of Ty. He's certainly more pragmatic, and I think the RJ character that that we meet in X is a lot of Ty's a filmmaker talking about and he's just the practicality, what goes into filmmaking, and I think that's what X is what goes into making. Well, the same effort that goes into making a film, a horror film, same effort that goes into making a pornographic movie. I mean, it's still need to find a place to film it and actors and all those things. But yeah, it's so special to go get to make the movie in the middle of pandemic when we felt who knows what the future holds, and then double down and get the opportunity early enough in the process to then really take advantage of what does that mean? We're making a prequel, so a lot of the world, is able to if you're watching X after seeing Pearl, I think you go back and you can see a lot of things that were specifically placed in the world, in the background, props, that kind of stuff, things that are in the house, and I think that's feels more lived in, and it'd be really hard to almost replicate that. If it wasn't planned, so well in advance.
Right. And you got to do one right after the other.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a sure thing going into it, but we, I think you just kind of plan and you hope. And that's, and that's what Ty did. I mean, he kind of seeded the idea and just kind of keeps, and then the idea is his ideas are contagious, where you get the excitement that he has for something is oh, and then you're oh, that sounds awesome. And he's yeah. And then, he just keeps going, and then he'll sit and then he'll commit to the script, and because we without that there's no map for what we're gonna do, and the script was happening. He and Mia worked on the script for X while in quarantine in New Zealand where the films were shot, and it's a 2-week mandated quarantine in the middle of, or actually, well, he got into it at the end of 2020, so I mean it was it was him and Jacob Jaffe, our producing partner, we're in luxury jail, as they called it, where 2 weeks and you're just mandated to your rooms, and meals are brought to you, and then you get your outdoor yard time, so you can get some sun.
It's crazy.
But in that time, he was kind of FaceTiming with Mia, and she agreed to, if the opportunity came, to stick around and make a second movie. That she'd be down to do it, and so off they went into kind of writing Pearl. And so I remember reading Pearl early in the new year and was oh, this is fantastic. When do we get to make this one? And they go, we'll see. And sure enough, A24 did give us the go ahead. And so as soon as X wrapped production, prep started for Pearl, and it was like in 3.5, 4 weeks we were into production on Pearl. And you know, I you know, and you're like, wow, this is, you know, here we are making 2 movies.
Yeah, I mean, so they greenlighted Pearl without did they see the script? I mean, usually
Yeah,
they're gonna
yes,
wait,
yes,
is this
yes.
gonna
They
be
saw
is
they
X
saw
this
they
lead?
definitely saw the script, and I think numbers were run. I mean, that's a big part of it. It's but it is not something that happens often or ever. It's so special. It was a unique situation, and they've never done it before. They really took a chance, but I think, you know, between the script and at this point they've spent enough time working with Ty, and have seen how X is coming along in terms of all the footage is coming through. It just, you know, they were very, you know, I heard that they were very filmmaker friendly, and then in the experience, we really got to feel how filmmaker friendly they are. I mean, they're just an incredible company and just supporter, and you know, yeah, and on we go.
That's great.
Being able to reuse sets and locations like that, does that save you a bunch of money for the second movie?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's, you know, the story is that when we made the Sacrament back in 2012, we built these compounds for Father and Eden Parish, and that was just outside of in Rincon, Georgia, just outside Savannah. Construction was probably, you know, added a couple weeks of prep to our you know, kind of prep schedule. And you know, and it was like, I think, our first, you know, fairly massive or elaborate build from the previous films. And you know, and then after we filmed for, I think, barely 20, 22 days or something on that movie, and you know, it all just goes away because it's in someone's backyard on the you know, this farm.
Right.
And you know, and so it feels incredibly wasteful and sad, and you know, so you know, there was talk about maybe they'd keep Father's house for something, but it wasn't, you know, movie sets aren't really built to residential code, you know. It's just you know, and so in that situation, then it can't really stay up. And so, you know, he just felt like, you know, with what they have to build on X, you know, it'd be a shame to see that all go away. And so, you know, the concept of prequel, and what makes the prequel, you know, more kind of you know, it makes more sense, is that, you know, you get to put a fresh coat of paint on it, you know, and you're as opposed to aging something.
Yeah.
You know, this might be a good idea if you build these to code, and then when the movie's over, you make them Airbnbs. So even if the movie fails, you're going to make some money on the Airbnb.
Like the Texas
part.
Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. Well, you know, actually, just to loop into, you know, back to, I think, Alok for 1 second there, is that Alok and I met at a bar that I was told, it's one of these Hollywood stories that you hear. It was a bar that's actually was a movie set for Yes Man. It was I think it was Bigfoot Lodge. There's a Bigfoot Lodge East, which is the original, and then they built it as a set for a movie, and then they had to get rid of it, and so the bar owners, I think, bought it, and then they have it on the west side, and you know, so it's Bigfoot West,
cool.
and it's like this lodge, and it's very cool. So we hung out there, and then the owners own this other bar called Oldfields, and that's where we met. So anyhow, so I think, you know, it has been done, you know, where you do build it and then someone can use it. And I think that's better. I mean, we try to be green as possible when we're making these, you know, these things, because, you know, filmmaking can be incredibly you know, I guess excessive with, you know, with waste.
Yeah,
sure. You know, I just met at a convention a couple weeks ago a guy who bought Buffalo Bill's house from
Oh, really?
Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, that guy? We met him.
Yeah, and turned it into an Airbnb.
Wow.
And he put the well in the basement, and he did the whole 9 yards. It was really cool. Yeah.
You guys can visit, you know, the Innkeepers, the Yankee Peddler, I believe, in Torrington.
We've been meaning to go up there.
Yeah. You know, I always check every now and then to see if it's still around, because it's had its challenges through the years. But I mean, you know, that the experience of staying there, you know, led to us making that movie, And then when we premiered, we had a little Connecticut premiere there, and it was like we watched it across the street at the Warner Theater, and then you went across to the Yankee Peddler to have like your reception. And there's a lot of ghost hunting activity that still takes place there.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and the House of the Devil house was for sale at one point.
I was gonna say, were you staying at the Yankee Peddler when you were filming the House of the Devil?
That's
How
right.
you got the idea?
Yeah. It was about a 45-minute commute. But it was a reverse commute because I mean we're coming home at 6, 7 a.m. But it was like the only hotel big enough to house a crew that I could also afford. To put everyone up there. It was a pretty wild time, and Ty had just come off of like Cabin Fever 2 earlier that year, and was in editorial, but it was like start-stop, and then we went to House of the Devil, and really kind of set out to make something truly special where he was in control.
Well, that's one of my, if I'm going to pick like top 3 horror movies, that's in there. I absolutely adore that movie, and I've seen it at least twice a year, every year since it came out. I mean, I don't know.
It was. I mean, all movies I think are so challenging to make. It's small miracles every day to keep it on the rails and push through. And that's just production, which is only like the halfway part, where then we got to get through post and everything. But it really like kind of landed with audiences, and I'm so proud of the movie. Like when we get to revisit it with every Halloween. It comes up on lists and people are reminded. I get a lot of credibility for being a part of that movie.
Yeah, and people are now talking about how Ty West is a master of capturing an era, because that looks like it was an 80s movie. X looks like the 70s. Pearl looks like old Hollywood, the 30s. But just real quick, I can't not talk about the Innkeepers, because I'm a horror guy, people are like, give me a deep cut movie. What have I not seen I should watch? And I'm like, oh, you should watch the Innkeepers. And I gotta tell you, I've seen the movie a few times. Every time Sarah Paxton goes down into that basement, I get nervous. And I'm like, I don't know what happened.
Don't go. Yeah. No, I mean, Innkeepers was like really such a joyful movie to make because we had already spent so much time at the Yankee Peddler and knew the owners and made the call. I mean, I've never prepped a movie in that short amount of time, which is something that like. We didn't have the budget actually between the two movies, House of the Devil and Innkeepers, was actually a little bit less, but it's like, all right, like we know the place, and a lot of us who worked on it, like for example, like we talk about capturing that era. Ty is very specific. He really knows like these eras, and I think to do it authentic, to bring it the authenticity that it needs is to do it like sort of like I think 80s is really a carryover of 70s, kind of like aesthetics that moves into, like people don't run out and buy new stuff. Right. And on those movies, Jade Healy was our production designer, and we worked with her on a large number of these movies up until X and Pearl, I think, where she wasn't available to join us. And so then we worked with Tom Hammock, who I believe worked with him on the Amazon series Them. He also worked with like Adam Wingard on Godzilla. I mean, like, so super talented gentleman who just brought so much, to both those movies and really, filling them out and making them feel lived in. I mean, I think that's like, that's the part that like, I think wins, the authenticity over for everybody.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
I have a more of a generic question that I always, I always wonder, and I always hear different answers to. What the hell does a producer actually do?
Depends who you ask, right? I think, if you ask me, I know and I come from just like, no budget filmmaking. So, we kind of, we're a catch-all for all things, movie making is a business enterprise, you're making a small business. And so, but there are different types of producers, people who specialize in certain, aspects of it. But, I come from an on the ground world. So, which involves taking a project from beginning to the end. Usually it's like, we get a script and you got to break down and budget it and then kind of figure out a roadmap of and that's got to be in alignment with the director and the filmmakers, looking to do. And every filmmaker's at, where they're at in their career to justify the sort of budget that, and the resources that you really need to make it. I mean, there used to be a time where I would say, oh, we can make anything on any budget. But, now I'm like, oh, well, it depends on what you want it to feel like, be like, and how is it going to be consumed, at the end of the day.
Right.
But yeah, and I think that's that's a broad answer, I suppose.
So on a small movie, you do
we got a lot of hats.
needed.
Yeah, on a small movie, if I don't allocate resources and put it on someone else's, assigned to somebody else, then it may fall back to me whether I'm a specialist at it or not. And so I've learned a lot over the years in getting to make, these movies. And that was something that, we did with Larry Fessenden and his company Glasslight Picks. It was just like a group of artists and supporting one another. I brought some level of business acumen to, this sort of playground of we're going to be making movies, and it can be super fun to make movies. But it is a real challenge. I mean, because you're filming for 12 hours in a day. And so the hours are brutal. And when you're making horror movies, it's all at night. And, I'm not in my 20s anymore. And I realized wow, we still have to do daytime hours, and so, then you're pushing a lot more. It's like you're getting up earlier to get, back to emails and whatnot and communicate to whoever you need to, and then be on set for the majority of the shoot so that you're there. That's where it's being made. And if you want to, have any sort of input into that, that's the best time to be there. I think, with Ty, I mean, he's so just so specific in what he's going after that, that I always felt comfortable that I can go deal with the tomorrow's needs because he's got it. And if there's any emergencies that, somebody's going to call and find you, and so,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's where I cut my teeth in a lot of sort of low budget movies, and I think that I've been fortunate to work with really talented filmmakers that we have really great end result from it all.
All right, I'm going to take you back. I'm going to take you to graduation day at the New York School for Visual Arts.
Yeah.
So you and Ty have spent time. You've been watching movies. There's a two-pronged question. What was your go-to movie that you would both watch over and over? I'll tell you, mine with my friends was Monty Python and the Holy Grail. We could recite every line from that. And when you're leaving, do you and Ty look at each other and go, "Hey, Ty, you're going to be a director. I'm going to be a producer." Did you know this is how it was going to go? And that you'd be together? I'm really curious about that.
Well, so I mean, we're in school in the early 2000s, and so Lord of the Rings is dominating, cinema. Peter Jackson, one of Ty's all-time, filmmakers that was such a figure, especially his early work. That's so practical. So we watched a lot of Lord of the Rings in that time, and it was always the extended cut.
Yeah.
We'd watch, commentary, DVDs and Blu-rays was it was great. And, we'd go to his parents' house and we'd be in the basement. And that's what we'd do. And then finishing up SVA, I mean, your senior year, you're doing thesis films, and we were both in the directing program. Producing wasn't a focus, although it was something that I already was sort of just had an extra, I don't know, feeling about or just gravitation towards. It's really what I learned in film school is that you can't direct anything unless someone is organizing the environment and to do that. Right. The amount of logistics that has to happen just in order to get there, have the equipment that you need to do what it is that is, directing the movie. And so, and I guess I definitely struggled because I was always ambitious with the films that I was making. And that Ty's approach was let's keep it simple and let's do that really well. And so his early shorts was, a very condensed kind of story, but super well executed, right. And then through the edit, through sound design, score, and then, and then finish. And so I think that's something that I witnessed where I was always challenging myself to do something so over the top, and it was oh man, what, it's movie making so hard. He's right. Let's keep it simple. And then over time, you have more resources to then take care of those things, but there's a lot of trust, you got to rely on each other to deliver on those asks.
So you never said to him, "Hey, man, it's my turn to direct. Why don't you produce this one?"
I definitely, I definitely didn't turn around and ask him to produce, but I definitely turn around in school and like lean on his editorial insights, because I mean, I think that what makes Ty such a strong editor. I mean, I'm sorry, director, correct me. Is that he's such a strong editor,
Yes.
and he's always, and that's where we actually met, is like, while we our first year at SVA, we were in different kind of like scheduled tracks. We had a mutual friend, Sean Reed, who's in a lot of the early Ty West movies, like he's in The Roost and Triggerman, and we had big classes all together, and then it was being editorial, where you're just on your free time working, and then I'd see him like, "Hey, what are you working on?" And like, we're cutting on film back then on 16 millimeter stuff, and so it was cool. It was cool to meet someone with like real genuine interest in it, working late and just doing it, and that's. Like going to film school was such a dream coming out of high school. It was just like, oh, wow, we're doing this, and hopes to come out of here and maybe be a working professional.
Yeah, you earned your money back. You got your ROI for sure.
I have to just chime in real quick. I have all the Lord of the Rings extended editions, and there's multiple commentary tracks. I have watched them all. Like, people are like, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, that was like going to film school. I learned so much about movie making from watching. When you hear the cast, and then when you hear, like, I love the books, and when they were talking about why they made decisions and what they had to do, but then like the other guys are talking about tricks they did with the hobbits and stuff. I'm seriously.
You learned so much insight into how, and those movies were so massive. I mean, I think, and I got to meet another producer on Lord of the Rings, Rick Porras, and like he would talk about, Peter's flying from one unit to another unit in helicopter just to see, and then like, and if it didn't work, they had the resources because they're shooting for such a long period of time to like reshoot stuff, which is such a luxury that we don't have on our sort of smaller budget stuff, and all the different sort of unit directors that you're trusting to then go do it and pick up these shots that like you need inevitably.
Didn't you have Peter Jackson's company or team help you guys out with Pearl?
Absolutely. Well, on both. I mean, when you go to New Zealand, to make a movie, like I feel like you don't avoid Peter Jackson. You kind of lean into to him, and so we were fortunate to land over at Park Road Post as one of his facilities. I think Wingnut Studios is sort of connected to it, his production company, but they were, incredibly supportive of our project, starting with X. And, knowing that we were going to stick around and do Pearl, we were able to get, sort of a deal for both movies. And they were really like incredible to help us, something that, I was managing is a lot of the post-production and we're dealing with color science. And while shooting film was something we explored, we shot film on a lot of the previous movies, House of the Devil and the Innkeepers. And I'm a technical guy. So we, really work through, the end product and how we get there. And you're working the DI to kind of like, take some footage and see where it can go to establish looks. And in X, Ty put a lot of effort into making sure that the movie has this sort of authentic feel to it. It's a movie within a movie. So there's the 35 millimeter look and the 16 millimeter look that was done. And so we worked with, the colorist Damian McConnell over there at Park Road Post. And it was it was just like, I don't think we could have done it really without them in this situation, especially when we were in post and then, the pandemic COVID finally made it into New Zealand. And so at that point, they had to really pivot quickly to support us and sustain our editorial situation because we were working in the facility. And so they basically moved Ty into a place that was hardwired and that he could stay in and continue to edit.
Wow.
It makes sense you mentioning the colorist and all that, because that was one of the things we talked about when we reviewed Pearl, was just the color of the movie, making it look like that kind of time frame and just how well it worked. It looked phenomenal.
Yeah, with Pearl, Ty really went, a very different direction from X. I mean, that was intentional, mimicking Technicolor, and I think that was from the pitch. It's supposed to be like, a dark, like, Sound of Music, it's like, references. And so
Wizard of Oz.
yeah,
Wizard of Oz, that's what I thought of.
with obviously with the Scarecrow.
And the bike, it was like the witch on the bike.
Riding the bike, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think we already had kind of like played with sort of the DI test with the start of X, and so in Pearl similarly it was like, let's push and let's see where we go. But I mean, I think intentionally, like with Elliot Rocket, the DP, and Tom Hammond, production designer, and Malgosia Terskana, who was doing our costumes. I mean, like they're all working together to kind of bring this vision to life, and Ty's bringing having the colors really kind of pop in Pearl. And so, and the big challenge was that we were really finishing on X, and while like also trying to lock picture on Pearl in the edits. And so and Ty's been in New Zealand the whole time for over a year, so working on both movies. Wow. And so I think when they went off in November 2020, it wasn't an expectation to kind of be there that long, and then he doesn't get back until the following year. And so he was able to do some color passes with Damien in person in New Zealand on Pearl, but not certainly complete the whole movie. And so when we went to finish Pearl after Excess premiered, it was all remote. And so it was like having to do the work remotely in a facility that was like matching the color, and then hoping that like, there's no, weird technical snafus that can go wrong, in finishing out.
Sounds like a pain in the ass, but the final product looks great.
Yeah, well, it's to some, I mean, yeah, I know it is what it is. I feel like these are just the challenges, but it's like we're also living in a time where we can do this. All of the X edit was happening remotely, where footage is being uploaded into the cloud, and we have an editor in LA managing the edit while Ty is on set shooting the movie, and we have an assistant editor we're working with. Based out of Park Road, and sets like still like 3 hours away. So I mean, footage is like coming down, getting up. We have a whole thing that's happening, and somehow it's still keeping us on schedule to have dailies up on the regular, and then cuts available for Ty to kind of look at over the weekend, and kind of give the editor David Kashraj like notes. So that all of it is moving forward. And I think that that's something that was like we hadn't done before. All the previous movies, editorial did not start until the movie wrapped. And that, it was just something like, because Ty edits, and so he just like doesn't need to look at it, and just made sure that somebody's watching footage to make sure there's not like a hair in the middle of frame throughout.
Got your thumb on it again, buddy.
All right. So, I'm sorry, I have to jump in here. The cast in X is amazing, and obviously at some point we have to talk about the force of nature that is Mia Goth. But Brittany Snow, I've never seen her like this, and she's amazing. But did you guys get Jenna Ortega before she was Jenna Ortega? Because she's in everything now, and she's like the new queen. I just saw her in the Foo Fighters movie. I mean, she's Wednesday.
Well, I mean, Scream movie? She's incredible. I mean, this is like she's cast in 2020, and so I mean, she's already by that point in Mick G's I think The Babysitters sequel. I believe that was she's already done that, right? And so, but yeah, I mean, like I think it was like and I'm just trying to remember if like if Scream was before or after. But I mean, she was just on that rise, and just kind of like, so she was like, certainly a newcomer for us. But I mean, just the timing worked out so well for the release, and just like where she's at in her career. And I think, it's just something that like, it's, just it worked out.
She's so good in it. And it's funny because Mia Goth is the story. And when you get to Pearl, you're like, she probably should get nominated for an Oscar. She was that good. But in X, like I said, I just rewatched it. I'm going, there's like powerhouse performances by everybody.
Yes.
And then I'm sure you hear this all the time. I had no idea Mia Goth was playing two characters. I kept going, I knew it was somebody in makeup. And then like at the end, the credits was like, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah. It's I know. I mean, and it's great. It's I think it's great. It's great if you know. It's great if you don't know. And I think like if you I love watching movies and just like being able to watch movies and not try to dissect them in the middle of watching. And I think that's what the second viewing is usually for. But it was something that like Ty was really looking for in who was going to play Maxine. And when he met with Mia, it was the first thing he kind of says to her is like, hey, what do you think about playing Pearl? And she kind of takes this moment to kind of contemplate it, and was just like, oh yeah. And then you could tell how excited she got over it, and it was exciting to kind of see that the process, because it adds more technical challenges because you're locking off cameras in order to match and like have doubles kind of standing in for the reverse, and then
to film somebody getting into bed with themselves.
Yeah. Plus the makeup is an extensive effort. It takes a lot of time, so it's not like you can do that quick on the day. It's like this is a day where she's going to be as Pearl and and is in that character, and other days where she's not, and then like there's there's a double that kind of stands in, so that there's and then matching everything. It's I mean, Ty always talks about how like it was such a difficult movie to edit because of the the technical level of matching everything, and if you shifted anything in the movie, it's like it's going to ripple down the line, so down the timeline rather. So but yeah, it's so fun. And I think of the new Suspiria where Tilda Swinton plays multiple roles. That I remember like who played the old man, and you're like, oh my goodness.
See, now I knew it was Tilda Swinton. The second I saw it, I go, oh, that's Tilda Swinton.
I didn't.
I did not get that at all.
I mean, the second I was like, oh, it's Tilda Swinton. But this, I swear to God, when I found out it was Mia Goth, that was.
Yeah, and at the movie theater I was in, it was this little theater in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and that rolled up, and there were, I think, like 30 of us in there. We were like, what? Like there was this collective, what? And thankfully, as we were going in, the ticket taker said, everyone stay till the end.
Yeah.
Leave until this thing's completely over. Thank God he told us. It's
yet another layer. These movies have all these layers. Like we keep talking about multiple viewings. There's so many movies that it's one and done. And this is like, I remember seeing The Sixth Sense, and then you go back and you're looking for the color red, and wait, how did he act in that? These movies have that kind of rewatchability, and then of course the looking for the alligator. But just I guess while we're on Mia Goth, the two things we were talking about when we talked about Pearl, I was like, she's the Oscar nomination moment is that monologue she gives, but then I said, but that smile at the end of the movie that she holds, if there's any boost over the top, that could be it. What like, give us a little insight on those.
Well, I mean, so the monologue is obviously a massive monologue, and in the way Ty approached in directing it is that it's like he's treating it like a stunt, and so and there's a certain point, in the head of it where if anything goes wrong, we cut the take and then we restart. But once we're past that mark, it's full tilt till the end, and it's all on Mia to kind of carry it through. And so, and she's just such an incredible performer, that brings it, is prepared, professional, and then like it's, and I think I think Ty's approach and his pacing, it's different. I think he pushes audiences, to subvert expectations. It's something even like I'll go back, to film school. He would show his short films, and he never would traditionally temp any of his early cuts. So there would not be full music and sound design while it'd be early and raw. And I remember like some of our professors or other students be like, oh, I think it's running too long, you should cut. And he goes, no, trust me, when the other elements are in there, it's going to work. And it's like, and I remember, and the same thing when we're in House of Devil and Innkeepers, explaining that to other collaborators and executives and stuff. And so, but like now that we're working with on X with like an editorial collaborator, you have someone else that's able to kind of bring that in. And by the time we showed the studio the film on X, like the movie is so well polished with like temp, sound design, score pieces from our composer that it's pretty, it's like it's there, and even visual effects. I mean, our assistant editor Scott Milligan, just incredible. Just was temping in stuff, so the movie feels really fleshed out. It's such a different experience, now that we have the resources. And then in Pearl, Ty's doing all the editing himself, and he's doing it. But Pearl's such a different movie, and he felt very confident about handling it. So the monologue, I mean, you're just on that, that shot. I mean, it's intentional to just stay on it, and not really cut away until you're flipping over to the other angle. Yeah.
The tension, that movie, that scene's so brilliant because you are so engrossed in what she's saying and like, how long is this going to go on for? And then as you start to see the crazy, she does it several times in that movie where you're talking to somebody and suddenly you start to see the crazy come out, and you're like, oh wait, what have we gotten ourselves into? So that,
Mom
and then
was right.
Yeah.
between that and that scene in X with the alligator coming across the water was so well done. The tension, and then it set the mood for the rest of the movie, because now you're like, oh crap, nobody's safe. Like, when's that crocodile coming back? Whatever.
Yeah, and that's underscored with Chelsea Wolfe's voice of her, her ethereal voice that she did with Tyler Bates, in that big overhead shot. It's funny because it's like, we're working with Weta for their they built the alligator, and it's an incredible piece, but it's still a practical element. So there's challenges with it, trying to keep it underwater, and then it's like it's they're all filmmakers who've dealt with practical effects, they don't always work like they're supposed to, and then you got to kind of manage it. But with the end result, I mean, that's where you go, you fix it in post and you figure it out how to get it to work. But the moment does work incredibly well, and then again, that's something that's already built, so then you kind of can flip it to the other movie. And then just to answer the other question that you had about the last shot of Pearl with Smile, that was something that Ty kind of said, hey, why don't we just do this take where you just go as long as you can, and that did it once, and that's what's in the movie.
Wow, that's great.
She's so good in that. It feels like one of those where 5 years from now, when she's doing Marvel movies, you're like, hey, remember the indie nerds that we made the movie with?
Yeah. I hope for better for her than Marvel movies.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's very classy, and and I think and even in the movies before us, I mean, and I know that she just worked with Brandon Cronenberg on his next movie, so looking forward to her next performance, because she's just the real deal, and like you said, just a tour de force, and I do hope that the awards bodies recognize her, because they tend to not really pay a lot of attention to genre, but we have a pretty prominent filmmaker speaking out loudly about how well Pearl is. So and Mike Scorsese,
Pearl was set a long time in the past. I think Grandma and Grandpa were young at that time. But it has a modern feel to it, and tell me if I'm wrong, but this is what I got out of this. So this whole time, Pearl's going to be a star, right? She's going to be a movie star. And I think of all these young people who are going to be a YouTube star, are going to be a social media star.
Oh, here we go. Taking a shot at me again.
No, you're excluded. But you get your chance and you find out, wow, she's completely delusional. This is just no talent or ability whatsoever. Was that an intentional kind of nod to this is what kind of goes on now, and it's been going on ever since movies came into being?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a theme of society. Everybody wants to be a star, and it's like, I think a lot of stuff you have to be kind of bold and brave to even go after it, really, in a confident manner, and it's it's sort of like you don't need anyone's permission, you just got to do it. Right. That's sort of I think trying to make movies the same way. It's and it's we're just really fortunate and lucky to deliver movies that really connect with audiences and build a fan base that allow us to get to make the next one. And but the commentary is definitely intentionally in there. In both films. I think with Maxine's character and with Pearl, and that's I think what's fun is the corollary, because I don't think you listen to what Pearl says in X so seriously when she says it, like it was just like you, and
both delusional. It's funny. It made me think when my kids were younger. I had my oldest daughter when she was like maybe 14, 13. She's like, I don't ever need to learn how to drive. I don't need to get a job. I'm going to be a YouTube star because I can sing. No. So, and then she used to put stuff out on YouTube and stuff, and then there wasn't much return.
I always remind me, I think you got to do it for the love of the craft, and not for the chase of the, of whatever, because it's like you got to define what success is out of all that,
exactly.
And continue to hone the craft. So when the time, when you get your call and the opportunity to do it, that, that you're prepared, and whether, acting or, writing, directing, I think like if you want to go out and make movies, you got to just do it. Find a way that allows you to do it,
That's right.
And because everyone gets a different start, and some people's paths are a lot shorter than others, but I think, and sometimes you may find that it's not for you,
or you can just manifest everything you want. Just put your vision board and make it happen.
Well, it starts with a dream, right?
It does, and it ends with a lot of work.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I'm always so supportive of young filmmakers, and I want to because I don't think it wasn't like the path was so easily laid out. I mean, for me, and I remember a lot of this was like sort of in deference to people saying that I couldn't do it in high school. I mean, you can't make movies, and I'm like, well, why not? You got to know people, and I go, okay, so. Let's work on it, and let's, and like I remember, self-taught, right? Like just like, reading books and convincing my parents to like let me go to like a film school crash course early on, just to like, let's see, and
right.
and so, surprisingly, like they supported me then, and they let me go to art school, so
that's not always easy with parents.
Yeah. And I don't know, not the Asian parents. I was like, I'm not going to do law school or going to be a doctor.
Right.
Or what they really wanted me to do was computers. But I was grateful because they invested a lot in my youth in having computers around when computers were new. And so that was something that like I got to play with early, and that really helped me, I think, in this industry, just being able to use the computer and the power of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason's like you're at a snap too.
Yeah. What you don't see behind my, I have a giant UV zapper for mosquitoes that like to frequent my office, and
it was so loud. I thought something in front of me snapped. That's why I was looking around. Like
I get a genuine like jump because it's it's never timed, and it's but it's there, and it's getting that time where they like to somehow get in. I don't know where they're coming from, maybe through the AC or something. But I thought California wasn't have them, but now we have this whole new breed of ankle biters that
So that's the best because Jason's so oversensitive to sounds. So I love when there any kind of noise goes on. His ears go whoop.
That one, I legit thought something in my office broke. I was like, "What the hell?" So, speaking of the future, what's on your vision board? Like, what would you ultimately like to do? What's the goal?
Oh, well, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I continue to support other filmmakers in their endeavors. I'm helping Jen Wexler with her sophomore feature, The Sacrifice Game. That's an editorial now. I've been developing a fun, dark series with Alok, actually, and Eduardo Sanchez, and this anonymous writer that we kind of like came to meet from the internet, and it's this guy goes by the name of Bleeding Critic, and he's been around for a little while doing a lot of creepy reviews and reviews.
Yeah, I've seen that guy.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so we're developing a little series with him, and yeah, it's called Inside Your Skull, and we'll see. You know, we haven't taken it out yet, but we've been really developing it over the course of the pandemic, and it's come a long way between the four of us, and then yeah, I mean, you know, and then I continue to like, talk to like, Graham Resnick, when he's not, so busy writing video games. I'd love to get back to him, with him behind the camera. We did Deadwax for Shudder, and we always would love to go back to, whether it's with them or somebody else, whether it's a feature or a series. I mean, like, Graham is so talented. I mean, he's one of Ty's oldest collaborators. I mean, growing up with Ty, and then Graham was at NYU, and sound design all these movies, and that was something that made Ty's films stand out, was because he has this talented sound designer who's also does a lot of music, original music, and we were able to get him on X, and really kind of bring that full circle, that journey. And then I don't know, I think about places that I've made movies. I've made a lot of movies. I've made movies on the water. I've made movies, a lot of movies in the woods. I'd like to go to space. I mean, that's something that sci-fi. I think if we like a movie that I love is Alien. And so
Hey, look, if Jason and Leprechaun can go to space, why not Pearl?
Exactly. And Hellraiser. Didn't Hellraiser go to space too?
Unfortunately, it did.
We should put Michael Myers in space. That should have been how it ended.
But it's got to be an original movie, and so I know like Ty had a space offering a couple years back, but he's so quick with writing that he'll move on. Like the interest will fade, and his own interest will fade, and we'll move on. So we'll see. What sci-fi journey I get to go on there, and I don't know, and every now and then I'm always like, oh, do I want to kind of make something, and but I'm like, I got so many projects to look after. When do I have time?
Yeah. Now I can't let you go before I ask. Now you mentioned Glass Eye Picks. I want to ask you about, as my wife calls him, Larry Fessinger. I don't know how she can't get his name right, but Larry Fessenden. What was it like working with him, and do you have any fun stories?
Oh my gosh, we have another hour.
He seems like a blitzer.
I owe both Ty and I owe our sort of our careers to Larry and Glass Eye Picks. Ty infamously was already familiar with Larry's movies while in school in freshman year, and Kelly Reichard was Ty's film professor his freshman year. And Larry was going to come in, and it didn't come in. And then Ty asked Kelly to connect him with Larry. And then next thing you know, like Ty's interning for Larry. But as Larry would tell you the story, it's like, how quick Ty was able to get Larry to start making dubs for him, and on it went. But then Larry and Glasslight, kind of like gave us, financed The Roost, the first movie. And then I got to meet Larry. And then several years later, we went back to make we were trying to make House of Devil, and then we went back, and then we made Triggerman. We got that out, and that's when like I started to work with Larry separate of Ty, and then we did Graham's movie I Can See You, which is actually having has been a little theatrical screening suddenly in New York at the Spectacle Theater in Brooklyn this month, which has been really cool. It's like a throwback. And then we made I Saw the Dead, but I mean, like, there's just so many fun stories with Larry that it's hard. I would say it was difficult to pick one. Let me think of the journeys that we've had. I
always look at him as a more controlled Gary Busey. A more contained.
Larry and Barbara Crampton are like two of our dream guests. We're always like, how great would it get that Larry on here just talking about horror?
Oh yeah, well we can make that happen. I mean, like,
how big is his hair in person?
It depends, what time of day it is.
When he pops up in a movie, it's always so awesome. He's in that zombie movie with Bill Murray, and he's like kind of guy. I mean, he's in what's it? You're Next.
What I don't even know if he's got it out on the internet right now, but something really like fun stories. I mean, there's just so many adventures that I've had with Larry personally, as both like him as an actor and then him as a producer. But like, I think he's got this, death reel because he's died so many times in movies that he has to continue to update because he continues to die in movies. And so that I'm like, I'm like, well, he doesn't die. Well, not quite in I was thinking of I Saw the Dead, and I'm like, it doesn't quite.
Yeah, he is the man. And whenever I see him in the movie, I'm just like, I'm instantly happy.
Yeah. There's I mean, I think and he's so closely connected to Ty, and like continues to share his invaluable acumen to filmmaking. Larry's a real cinephile. As just like was making these movies in such a kind of support of the arts. I mean, it's so he's so generous with being such a supporter of other filmmakers, sort of early in their careers. And now his son Jack is a director as well, who's not
really?
just getting out of school and already has two features under his belt.
That's amazing.
Jack Fessenden. So but yeah, Larry and I just like, I think we heard. I'm trying to think of like really good story that we have, but there's just like kind of so many of just like probably like a lot of our drinking adventures that we have together, where we'd go to a film festival and be like, I'm leaving, and then it'd be LA or something, and like he'd wander out and then like not find his way, and then we'd catch him and be like, oh, we found you. We're like, we'll get you going.
When he orders a drink, is he a bourbon guy? What's his drink?
I mean, for a long time, because I don't know if it's because of, I'd like to think it's because of, with Glenn McQuaid in the office, we used to polish the Jameson like it was just water. And so the JMO, JMO and Estella would, very simple, or, it used to be Bud for a while. And the old Glass Eye Picks office, I mean, it'd be like, is it the beer o'clock yet, and bust out some brews. And, I think that was something like a rite of passage at Glass Eye was like, we were just, maybe we were also New Yorkers. But we were definitely like boozing away.
Lots of you can accomplish stuff on booze.
100%. I mean, but I think the superpower is the next day is that like, bouncing back and, I don't know, I could have a great night of Jameson and then be totally great and operational the next day.
That's good. It will end.
Bastard.
It will end one day. Like, oh, okay. That run is over.
Before I let you go, you mentioned Deadwax, and I'm glad you did. I just wanted to say that I really dug that show. I like the haunted medium kind of format. And I remember seeing that on Shudder, and it just, like all Shudder shows, I'm assuming you had the budget of about 4 hamburgers, but it looked great.
Wow, you nailed it. Yes. Exactly. It's just 4 hamburgers. No, we were really, I think we were one of the early shows that actually came to fruition. A lot of people were talking about getting stuff made with Shudder, and, they were just starting to figure out original production. And so, Graham, I had just relocated to Los Angeles, and Graham, had been developing the series with them and wrote out, this sort of like 8 episode mini series, and I was like, Graham, whatever you got, I'll do it. It's that's sort of my approach is like I just trust the filmmaker, and it's less about what it is. We figure out what it is together. But it's like if that's what you want to make, like let's get on board and let's figure that out. And Deadwax was really fun because it was the first time, getting to film something out here. I just brought my like New York kind of indie, film sensibilities, and it was good to return to something, that didn't have as many resources, and just, because I think when you're in that situation, you come up with creative solutions because you have to remedy. And so, I treated like, to be thrifty, we treated like a movie. We shot in consecutive, all the episodes in sort of we just broke it out and scheduled, like a big movie, and just shot in like, I think it was like 15 days is what we did it in. So it was like
15 days.
Yeah, wow. Brutal.
8 episodes.
That's crazy.
Did you just shoot it in real time?
It was a touch and go situation, and then you're just one of those like, we have to make every day because we can't afford to get behind schedule. And I, I was just like, yeah, but what we did do is like, I have a lot of, kind of tricks up my sleeve and how to do that. I mean, like we got this house that if you've seen VHS, the radio silence sequence, the end of the movie, I mean, like it's the same, it's the same house that is available.
Cool. Really?
We didn't realize that right away. I think when we went to check it out and it was like, oh, it dawned upon us later. But that house served as multiple locations because what kills us on a small shooting schedule is like a company move to have to relocate to another location. So it was just being efficient, and we had an incredible team, a great AD that worked with both Graham and Gordon Arkenberg on another project. And so like, having that communication, and that's something that's important. I think, why Ty's movies are, I think, really successful is like, it's about the team and that shorthand, that you can really trust and rely on each other. So, that trio, and then like, and then they have me and then my team that gives them the resources to keep everybody going. But we kept it to like I think we avoided overtime. I mean, like, staying within 12 hours, very respectful of the crew, and because I don't know, nobody wants to go deep into the night. It's unnecessary. And I think if you can plan it, but a very aggressive, setup count, something like 30 plus every day, trying to like, let's get that one more, shot in there because, every shot's going to help us, later in editorial. And I think there's things that like, take a little bit more time than you expect, like, stunts, when we're finally getting to that part in the series, like, but it was so cool. And I'm really proud of it. And, and I hope, maybe one day we'll get to like, go back to that world. But, I think, any Resnick world is going to be special too.
Yeah.
When you say you use that house for multiple locations, is that just set dressing, different rooms? How are you?
It's being resourceful. It's using like multiple rooms in the house with set dressing to play completely different locations.
Nice. I had no idea.
Yeah. And that's, great. We've done our job, and that's, but like, from Omens, like, we use the basement, we use the attic, we were using different rooms. It's the ladies' apartment. So yeah, like,
not bad for 4 hamburger budget. Really,
but they were double cheeseburgers. It wasn't just a regular hamburger.
I've got a selfish question, but this is very important to all three of us. You're a professional in the film world. We're podcasters. We're big horror fans.
We're unprofessional podcasters.
Unprofessional.
It's true.
We're having fun. This is like our poker night when we get together and do toast. Sometimes we love movies and gush, and sometimes we're not big fans of a movie, and we can kind of crap on a movie.
Then
we're worried.
We might have done that last night.
Perhaps. Then sometimes we're worried, like, this is going to be the time that the filmmaker watched it, and it has happened to us. Both when we've liked the movie and when we haven't liked the movie. Suddenly somebody's in the chat, like answering a question. You're like, oh my God, they're here. They can hear us. And it's always like, sometimes when we're being harsh, like, well, I'm in the throes of a conversation. I'm trying to be funny. Maybe I didn't feel that way. Other times, yeah, that's perfect. It's the best focus group you can have. But what do you think when you hear like podcasts and some like both positive and negative? And when it is negative, like, any advice for us?
Shut your mouth, boy.
Yeah, what should idiots on the internet say about movies?
Sure. I mean, look, it's a free country and you guys are subject to your own opinion. I do think about preconceived notions going into something. And I think that's the biggest challenge we face when we put something out. I think Eli Roth is really good at prepping audiences at film festivals of being like, hey guys, so excited to be here. And I guess, I'm sure if if there was a trailer out, I'm like, I'm sure you guys, have an idea of what this movie is going to be, but we're going to ask you to try to like kind of clear your mind and try to just come into this with just a blank, state and take it at just, what you're seeing. But I also think about, because I've been doing this long enough, it's like, like how did these movies get made and what was the intention? And I try to think about that, like, what's the intention? Because, in making movies, it is a challenge, and you're up against a lot of, it's a challenge between time and money, most of it. And then, the movie's made like, they always say it in film school, like, it's made 3 times. The movie's written, there's an intention behind whether it's the filmmaker or the writer that's writing it. And then a director comes on and they have their vision and whether they could pass and adjust things. And sometimes the writers don't have any input or say or control. And then there's editorial, and then I feel like that's the, that's the your final opportunity to really shape a movie. But when I come in, and I don't want to come in heavy handed with a lot of notes, but I come in and go, you have to make the best movie with what you have at that point, and it's like, you gotta and you can revisit the script, but it's like, sometimes you're fighting against yourself. And I, so, at the end result, not every movie is for everybody. And that's okay. And I think it's about distributors finding the audience for the movie, but I think what's great about horror is that there's such a wide reception to differences. And I think that's why, with horror, we're so much more collaborative, because we can have different tastes and we can have a difference of opinion, yet still be, cordial and respect one another, because, we still have a love of overall for the genre. Yeah. So I don't think we go into this with, you develop a thick skin over the years and it's like, fine, it wasn't for you. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Do you go and listen to reviews or read reviews of your movies?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're always curious. I mean, we're in age of internet. I mean, it's like when, the best is like a live, like you jump on Twitter to see what, the hashtag right away. Is it early, and you're like, okay.
Wild, man. Twitter?
Yeah. Or, now it's, that and TikTok and you just to get a ear to the ground, while, but and there's, I mean, I think it's exciting to get that, raw reaction. And, and then I also watch them, did they watch the same movie? I don't know, but, movies are different for different people, some movies can be a passing thing for people who aren't into, movie watching at all, which I just think is so wild, because it's such a thing that connects, I think, the world together.
And horror, especially, because this is such a passionate base. I mean, what other genre of movies has about 1,000 conventions around the world every year?
Yeah.
There's no rom-com.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, when I connect with horror fans, it's super fun. And there's this love language that exists, and, I think that's why, we listen, we tune in and, because I, grew up in that Asian video store, when you go hunting for that eclectic movie that somebody maybe hasn't seen, now with the internet, it's a lot easier to get those recommendations. But when a movie's discovered, it's super exciting. And that's also I think now, while I love theatrical and that opening release is really important for the business of movie making, the enjoyment of movies is that people will still come to find some of these older movies and titles that I've been a part of later, and and still get I'll still see a review pop up for an old title and be like, oh, awesome, someone just saw this. That's really cool. Yeah,
that is rad,
so but and when we're making the movie, it's we're not thinking about how it's going to necessarily be received. We're just we have our sort of agenda and focus of the way we're telling it, and then the way people receive movies and then they dissect them and think about them. It's that's really special.
Yeah,
very cool.
Well, we don't want to take up any more of your time. You're a busy man. You have a concert to go to. You're in LA. God knows how long it'll take to get there. But I want to thank you so much for coming on here. Also want to let you know that we're talking to Alok to maybe have him on at the start of the new year. And I say we make that a full-on drinking fest, and we have you on as well.
Yeah,
and talk complete and utter nonsense for
Oh yes. If I didn't have to drive this concert, I would have been boozing already. But I'm gonna wait to get there, and then the booze starts.
There you go. Yeah, you're invited to come back there and anytime. And we have never said anything bad about any movie you've had a hand in. So there you
which
go.
is kind of unbelievable.
I mean, yeah. I'm grateful. It's okay if you don't like something.
You haven't messed up yet. When you do, we will hammer you. But
oh, great! Yeah.
Well, opinionated shitheads.
We could debate about it.
Yeah. But
thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been a blast.
Yeah, guys,
it's
great
been
to meet each of you. Yeah, Jack, Hunter, Jason, thank you so much for the support, and and yeah, the podcast is fantastic, and I look forward to to listening to you guys chat about more movies that I enjoy.
We can't wait to chat about Maxine next year.
Oh yeah.
All right.
All right. See you guys.
Have a great
All
night.
right. Have a good one. Bye.